What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. It is Tuesday, April 10th. Welcome to the show, everyone. As you all probably know by now, I'm your host, Griffin Palmer. I'm joined by absolutely nobody, and that is due to a fault really of my own, really just because more technical difficulties seem to be plaguing the show left and right. If anyone follows the post show, they'll know that I am an actor and I am on set in a location, and we had a workaround planned that would allow us to record via a chat messenger client of sorts, and for some reason we tested it. It worked in the past. Doesn't want to work now, so I'm by myself, but that's okay because today we're going to be covering our early running back consensus rankings. I know saying okay to that is kind of strange because you would think that it would be good to have everyone's views, but considering that this is our pre-draft rankings and these are going to shift drastically as soon as the draft is over and as we move into the camp, we'll talk about this a lot more down the line, and we'll go much more in depth on the Patreon shows as well. So if you want to support the show, get access to these bonus shows where we always go more in depth anyway, go to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. So this should be a relatively quick show today. Just want to give you guys some early rankings, especially for those of you who we know are out there getting ready for your dynasty leagues and all your rookie drafts on, dynasty startups, keeper leagues. You got important things to get, figured out, important questions that you need answered. So we want to go ahead and give you guys some of our early rankings so you can make some of those informed decisions. If you want to find the show, make sure you guys subscribe wherever you're listening, of course. You can follow us on Twitter, submit your questions there. There are resources all over the place. We are on YouTube, iTunes, the Apple Music podcast app, whatever they're calling it, Google Play, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, we're all over. Just search for the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast. You'll probably find us. Now, we do have some top headlines to talk about today very briefly. For starters, we'll start at the quarterback position, where we'll start with Indianapolis, where the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, Andrew Luck, has said that he has yet to throw a, quote, NFL-sized football, end quote. This is in his rehab. He is expressing confidence that he is comfortable with his progress to this point. Of course, coming back from that shoulder injury, held him out all of last year, something he should have gotten taken care of about 3 years prior from today. It's scary. I know if CJ was here, he'd be definitely tooting his own horn on this one. He's not a big believer in Andrew Luck and his comeback. He's very hesitant when it comes to Andrew Luck. I know that if you were here for the quarterback show that we just did, my rankings were much, much higher than the other guys, and that was a little presumptuous. And with this news, I'm going to probably, like I was saying, I was going to move him down a couple pegs, because it's concerning that here we are in April, and he's still not throwing NFL footballs, much less doing any type of timing drills with his receivers, working in, or really working out with a team outside of his physical therapist. So definitely concerning. In some wide receiver news, New York Giants wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. reported that reported to the start of the Giants offseason training camp program. That's good news there for the team that is apparently trying to move the player, but he is playing out his contract, interestingly enough, because we thought he was going to step on a field without a new contract. So maybe he wants to participate, show the flag, be there for the training, but he's not going to play. We'll have to see as we move forward. A little of IDP news, some other news. If you play IDP, Oakland Raiders defensive lineman Khalil Mack did not report for the opening of the Raiders offseason training program per NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, so that's a huge loss there. He is the anchor to that defensive line, so that's something to cover as we move on. And with that, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's get to our topic of the day, our early consensus running back rankings, part 1. So hopefully we'll get this all worked out so we get the guys here for the running back twos, which we'll cover on Friday's show. The running back ones tend to be universal. It's just a little bit of a difference here or there. It's really pulling hairs here. It's a matter of preference for the most part in the early rankings, and the top 3 or 4 guys are pretty universally the same. We, however, have an interesting wrinkle in our rankings compared to most places because of one Jason Cabrera, which we'll talk about soon. But let's go through the list, and we'll start with our number 1 running back on the year thus far in our early consensus rankings, Le'Veon Bell. So I have him at 1, CJ has him at 1, Jason has him at 2. You can guess who he has at 1. The reason you see usually Todd Gurley or Le'Veon Bell as the number 1, Todd Gurley, the top running back last year, it boils down for, I know myself, I believe CJ feels the same way, and clearly Jason has Le'Veon Bell higher than Todd Gurley. It's consistency. We have one really, really good year of Todd Gurley doing this, and then 2 very differing years. His first year in 2015 with the Rams, he flashed. 2016, very bad. Now, it's easy to make the Jeff Fisher comparison there, but Jeff Fisher was there both those years. And then this first year under Sean McVay, he kind of exploded. So a lot of people have him as the number 1. A lot of us kind of want to take a risk aversion approach, wait and see. But with the addition of Dalvin Cook, I haven't factored that into my rankings yet. I am very tempted to move Todd Gurley up because with that deep threat stretching the field, it's going to make it very easy for him to run underneath. But as of right now, we have Le'Veon Bell as our number one running back. It's just consistency. Yes, he's playing under the franchise tag, but that incentivizes him if he chooses to play better because he's trying to break that. He's trying to set, I should say, a record-breaking contract for the running back position. And the way he does that is by going out there and putting on a clinic like he is known to do and does incredibly frequently. So he is the safe bet, he is the sure thing, and he gets a heavy, heavy workload. So Le'Veon Bell, of course, also involved in pass catching, great for any type of passing point per reception leagues. We are basing these initial rankings on standard because that's what the masses play. We are big proprietors and believers in half point per reception. But we're going standard for that reason. So Le'Veon Bell definitely gets a huge bump in half point per reception, which in that case you could even make an argument for our number 2 running back, which is David Johnson. The number 1 running back just 2 years ago, and definitely has the upside to be there again. I think all these top guys do. And the concern here is injury. I have him down at 3 because of that exact risk. You know, he was this Iron Man, but then he's been hurt both the last 2 times he stepped on the field. At the end of the 2016 season, that Week 17 game, he tweaked his leg. He bounced back. He was fine, but he did have to leave the game for injury. First game of Week 17 hurts his wrist. So now these are not anything they're going to expect. We're expecting at least to affect his explosiveness, his ability to cut, play, be the athlete that we know that he is. But it's concerning that all of a sudden he's racking up these injuries. So, I mean, it's splitting hairs, like I said. You just want to see him come back, and I like Todd Gurley's offense, who is our number 3 running back, who we've talked about a bit, more than the Arizona Cardinals offense at this point. Good offenses equal good fantasy production. Teams that are trailing tend not to run the ball, so that's why it comes down to CJ and I both having David Johnson at 3, Jason all the way up at 1. Jason is a Cardinals fan. He can be blind to these things, but you could easily make the argument that David Johnson is that guy. We've seen him do it before. Who's to say he doesn't do it again? So David Johnson is our number 2, but that's mostly because of Jason voting him as his number 1. Number 3, we've already talked about, Todd Gurley. Both CJ and I have him at 2. Jason actually has him at 4. I thought he had him at 3. Looking at it now, that's very surprising. So Jason is a big believer in the next guy. We're going to move on to our number 4 running back because our number 3, Todd Gurley, we've talked about at great length already. We will see. You'll see him at number 1. You usually won't see him out of the top 3 or 4. He's our number 3 consensus, but our number 4 running back is Ezekiel Elliott. Both CJ and I have him at 4. Jason has him up at 3, so that's what's kind of throwing... Jason's basically throwing this whole thing off. CJ and I are perfectly in unison through our first 5 running backs, which is kind of funny. So, Ezekiel Elliott, obviously, it's the upside. You know, he's incredibly talented. He's used in all 3 phases. He's not used incredibly heavily in pass catching, but he can catch the ball, and he has been explosive when he does. He averages about 10 yards per reception. 20. So let's see. His rookie year is 24 yards per game, 26 yards per game in his 2017 year. So, you know, he's involved in that facet, and I think they'll probably continue to work him in more, but obviously a phenomenal running talent behind it. A dwindling offensive line, but still a very good one. Still one of the upper echelon ones in the league, so the upside is absolutely there. I think we just like the ceiling and the floor better on these other 3 guys, which is why we have them ranked higher, except for Jason, who's kind of skewing the thing. So again, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, and then Ezekiel Elliott. The number 5 guy might surprise you depending on who you're following and where you are. Kareem Hunt. So a lot of people we were expecting probably is Alvin Kamara in that top 5. Well, as you know, if you follow the show at all, we're not big believers in the low workload upside there. Can he get it done? Yes. Have we seen other players in this league do that before and be incredibly productive throughout their careers? Yes. But we have a very small sample size with Alvin Kamara. We need to see more, and it's just risk aversion because when you have that small workload, your chances of just failing and getting a bust in the first round are very, very high. So he's actually much further down in our rankings. You will hear him today. But number 5, unanimously across the board for all of us, is Kareem Hunt. Look, Kareem Hunt, he had a phenomenal start to the year, a really, really strong end of the year, and then he kind of disappeared in the middle of the year. And even the coaching staff has chopped that up to themselves as a kind of my bad. So I think we expect them to use him more. That offense has gained extra weapons, adding Sammy Watkins. So I think the running lanes are going to be wide open for this guy. He's very heavily used and also incredibly heavily used in the pass game. 53 receptions. That's one of the highest among the position last year. So Kareem Hunt is a sure thing at number 5 to me. A definitely upper echelon guy. And then the next guy we're pretty similar on as well. Jason and I have him at 6. CJ has him at 7. He is our consensus number 6. Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, a lot of the same arguments. He seems to be consistent. I've made the argument for years that he is a very low efficiency, but he gets high volume. He had almost 300 rushing attempts. The only one to actually top 300 was Le'Veon Bell, fun fact. But he had almost 300 rushing attempts. He actually played all 16 games last year, which is exciting. He had 58 receptions, so he's involved in the passing game. 284 rushing attempts. 8 touchdowns. Broke 1,000 yards rushing. What more could you ask for? Almost 500 yards receiving. If he can stay healthy with this offense and this offense starts clicking like we know that it can, it has a lot of talent around the field, it could really turn out to be a very good year for Melvin Gordon. So why not take the upside and get him as your number 6? Obviously, the downside is if they start trailing or the low efficiency, maybe they cycle him out, they work other guys in, but he's involved in the passing game, so even if the Chargers start losing, I expect him to still be heavily involved. So I like Melvin Gordon. Obviously, injury risks are a concern, but he played a full 16 last year, which is encouraging. Number 7 on our list is Leonard Fournette, a guy that I have all the way down at 9. CJ has him up at 6. Jason has him right where he landed at 7. For me, I'm the lowest, so I'll just simply point out that he's not a pass-catching back, which is concerning. If this team starts trailing, he won't be involved very much. He did get 36 receptions last year, which I felt was high for him. I think he can do it, and I might bump him up my rankings, honestly. But they have upgraded that offensive line, which is why I can easily understand the argument where CJ has him as a top half of the number ones. He has him at 6. He's going to be used a lot. They lost their number 1 wide receiver in Allen Robinson. They really didn't replace him. They buffed up the offensive line. They brought in a bunch of other kind of 1A, number 2 wide receivers to kind of help progress the offense and kind of keep the lanes open, keep defenses honest. But I think as a whole, it should be fine. I think that Leonard Fournette should build on what he did last year. And if healthy, he had 268 rushing attempts in 13 games, guys. If he plays a full 16, we're talking 300 rushing attempts, and that's Le'Veon Bell territory. He broke 1,000 yards. Not the most efficient running back, 3.9, but he was hobbled. The offensive line wasn't as good as it could have been. It's a lot better this year. We'll see how he goes in his second year. The next guy on our list, our number 8 running back on the season, is a name that you're probably used to hearing much higher than this, LaShawn McCoy. Now, I have him at 10, CJ at 9, Jason at 10. So we're all pretty close here. CJ the high one, but only by 1 point. I think we're all trying to play risk aversion here. The Buffalo Bills don't really have anything right now. They've traded away a lot of things. A lot of their options have departed. Basically, their offense is LaShawn McCoy right now. And this is a running back with a lot of tread on his tires. He has an astronomical amount of rushing attempts. In his career, since 2009, he has 2,185 rushing attempts. In the last 5 years, he has 2 of which he broke 300 rushing attempts, and last year he came darn close. And now you have to worry about age and injury because he has an injury-riddled career. He usually plays. He hasn't ever not played double-digit games, but he's usually banged up in the other games he plays. He'll be 30 at the start of the year. So just a lot of attempts and an older running back, and a lot of that stuff always tends to build up to be a bad combination. Now, a good thing for him is that he is heavily involved in the passing game. He is scaled up in his time in Buffalo and trending the right direction. He went from 32 in 2015, 32 receptions, 50 in 2016, last year 59. So, if he finishes anywhere around there, that's a very safe floor, even if this team is trailing, which honestly, a lot of analysts and pundits and just really people around the league just looking at the power rankings are expecting them to probably be trailing. This team, they're in a full-on rebuild. They're not retooling. They're definitely rebuilding. And we'll see. And the draft will be interesting to see what they do, obviously addressing the quarterback position, because we don't think that the moves they've made to this point have solidified a thing on this team. I don't want to pile on Buffalo fans, but, there's a long way to go. I just don't have faith in A.J. McCarron being your starting quarterback. Charles Clay, I like a lot at tight end, but, he's He's good in good matchups. And then you got to hope that Zay Jones kind of gets going and Kelvin Benjamin turns it around. So, really, LaShawn McCoy is your offense. I think defenses are going to scheme to take him away. That's the risk there. But workload, running back one, he has a long career of doing it. I mean, at this point, we're talking about probably mid to late second round. You could take a shot on him. I'd be okay with that. Our number 9, yes, number 9 running back is Dalvin Cook, a name that most people probably forgotten about. CJ seems to have forgotten about him amongst us because he is the lowest by far, and I would love to get his opinion on why, because I have him all the way up at 7. Jason has him at 8, so one spot ahead of this, but what brings him all the way down is CJ, who has him all the way down at 16. I love Dalvin Cook right now. I mean, he was the highest talent going into the draft, well, not into the draft, obviously, into the underwear Olympics, into the combine last year. A bad combine pushed him down, but he was still very good. He showed well in the NFL until he had a non-contact injury, which is scary. That could be the risk aversion that CJ is doing right there. He got hurt kind of for no reason, but he was very, very good while he was there, and this team has done nothing but get better this offseason. The defense is stout. It's still a top unit. They've added offensive firepower, of course, with adding the quarterback of Kirk Cousins, which should elevate the entire offense. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, all these guys are going to get moving. I like the bringing in of John DeFilippo as the offensive coordinator. I think as a whole, this team has the potential to really continue to build off what it did last year. And even if it just kind of stays the same while all these new pieces kind of work their way in, because sometimes that takes a year or two, Dalvin Cook still, if he can give us what he gave us just last year in his rookie year, he has running back one upside for sure. I really like it. I mean, through 4 games, he had 74 attempts, averaging almost 5 yards per rushing attempt, and 11 receptions. So you put that out over a full season, he's going to get you close to 50 receptions. I like that a lot. So, yeah, Dalvin Cook, guys. Next guy on our list, our number 10 running back, Mark Ingram. Yes, ahead of Alvin Kamara. This is not universal. This is Jason being very, very pessimistic on Alvin Kamara because, spoiler alert, Alvin Kamara is number 11. So I have Alvin Kamara at 8 and Mark Ingram at 12. CJ has Alvin Kamara at 10 and Mark Ingram at 11. Jason has Alvin Kamara at 19 and Mark Ingram at 9. I think this is just pure risk aversion. We'll talk about both backs right now. Mark Ingram is the workhorse. Mark Ingram gets the vast majority of the carries. Mark Ingram, 230 rushing attempts last year, 120 for Alvin Kamara. So you see the split there. But here's kind of the key difference. 58 receptions, which is pretty darn good for Mark Ingram, but Alvin Kamara, 81. That is huge in the running back position. There are a lot of wide receivers who don't get that many. So when it comes down to things, I mean, obviously a home run hitter. Both these guys are on the field a lot, and we've seen a lot of players. We talk about this a lot, like Jamal Charles in his prime. He was never a huge volume guy, but he was unbelievably productive in his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. Fast, explosive, maybe not the longest career, not the biggest guy, only 5'10", 215, but he's 22. He had an amazing year, and if he continues to build off that, who knows? But I have him decreased because it's, as we've talked about, not a huge sample size. The low floor, high ceiling thing is not attractive for me in a running back one. I love it as a running back two. His asking price is just too high in drafts. I've seen him go as a top 3 pick before. I don't think that's going to be the case come draft season, but I've seen that this offseason, and that is concerning to me. Could he finish there? Yes. Is his ceiling there? Absolutely. But it's risk aversion, which is why we have him ranked down this low. Mark Ingram is a much safer floor play with a lower ceiling. Alvin Kamara is the exact opposite. Low floor, incredibly high ceiling. So it's what you want to do. We have Alvin Kamara ranked higher because this is fantasy and he is explosive, and it just takes one of those big plays to really set your week apart and win you that week. So do what you will. Here we have them back-to-back as our running backs 10 and 11. And then our number 12 running back on the season, well, on our rankings to this point of the season, is Jordan Howard. Oh, Jordan Howard. So Jordan Howard is a guy that we're pretty dispersed on right now. I'm by far the lowest, and I think I'm being a little pessimistic here. I'm going to probably move him up my rankings a little bit. I have him all the way down at 17, and I know that's not fair. I need to move him up from there. But it's just everything that surrounds him. That this team, it's just filled with question marks right now. Honestly, the Chicago Bears. Look, he's the starter, but Tariq Cohen behind him is the pass catching back. Jordan Howard is a monster 1-2 back. He's gonna be the in the open field running back. He's going to be the leadoff back. He's going to be the red zone, trying to be the hammer that takes it across the goal line and scores the touchdowns. But they've added a lot to this team. Obviously, Mitch Trubisky is going to be the full-time starter this year. Hopefully, he takes a step. Kevin White, they're really leaning on. They brought in Allen Robinson, which is huge. They don't have a lot behind him at wide receiver. Obviously, Taylor Gabriel there is now as well in the slot. So they've got a nice starting wide receiver core if Kevin White develops to what he used to be. Obviously, a 2015 first-round pick has not lived up to that billing as of yet. But the big thing, bringing in Trey Burton, a young quarterback's best friend, is a tight end, and Trey Burton has shown with his time in Philly to be a fantastic pass-catching tight end. So, I mean, he could be a great red zone threat. I think he could be an amazing option for this team, and he could honestly be stealing a lot of touchdowns because he's a big boy, and that could affect Jordan Howard's bottom line. Now, yes, I know he's been a huge rushing attempts, huge yardage guy, but it's risk aversion. I think he has a higher floor because I think this team's going to be more competitive this year, but the ceiling is what really concerns me with Jordan Howard. So again, I need to move him up because 17 is way too low, but there's just so many guys I really, really like that have, to me, a similar, if not close floor, but a much higher ceiling that I have ranked ahead of him, which we will talk about on Friday's show. But yeah, CJ has him all the way up at 8, and I don't blame him for that at all. That is completely justifiable. Jason has him right where he landed at 12, and I think that that's okay as well. So, yeah, power rankings again, really, really fast, and we'll go way more in depth on these in the not too distant future. We have Le'Veon Bell at 1, David Johnson at 2, thanks, Jason. Number 3, Todd Gurley. Number 4, Ezekiel Elliott. Number 5, Kareem Hunt. Number 6, Melvin Gordon. Number 7, Leonard Fournette. Number 8, LaShawn McCoy. Number 9, Dalvin Cook. Number 10, Mark Ingram. Number 11, Alvin Kamara. And number 12, Jordan Howard. So with that, man, the running back 2s are where it gets really interesting. Your running back 1s are pretty universal. Just, again, like I said, the order kind of varies depending on analyst to analyst, website to website. But once you get past these guys, the difference of opinions, the speculation, just the varying analytics and the thought process of the outcomes are just so widely different. It's where it gets a lot of fun. So hopefully we get all the tech working just right so we can get everybody back on the show for Friday. If not, I will be back. The show must go on, and it will, and we will deep dive a little bit more on those guys because I know not everybody is supporting us on Patreon. We really hope you guys do. Again, that's patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. It allows us to keep doing what we're doing, and when things happen like what's happening right now, things break. Technology is great when it works, but we would have the funds to then quickly fix these problems. So instead of trying to do a workaround. So if you guys find it within you to support the show, we greatly appreciate it, more than we could ever say. If you want to support the show in other ways, make sure you guys rate and review wherever you are listening. And if you really want to help, and this is going to be blasphemous to most of you, tell a friend about the show. Help us grow. I mean, I know you never want to give away your secrets in fantasy football, your sources, your information, your inside track, but we talk about this a lot when we talk about building an interesting and competitive league. A competitive league is a lot more fun to win or a place in the finals than to just stomp a league that's barely active. The more competitive the league is, the sweeter the victory, the more fun it is, the more intense the competition. It's just a better experience through and through. So maybe tell a friend about the show. You know, your friend tells 2 friends, the show grows, and that really helps us out a ton as well. So, guys, we greatly appreciate all the help and support. I hope that this was helpful. We will deep dive a lot more in future episodes as we move through the summer and on Patreon. Find the show wherever you're listening, and make sure you guys tune in every Tuesday and Friday. No matter what we have to do, the show will be there. Again, find us on Twitter and submit your questions as well. We'll answer them on the show. On Twitter, we are located at the FF Fanatics, or you can find me individually. I'm at GPalmerFFF. So, yeah, with that, I guess we are out of here, and I will see you guys on Friday. Take care, guys. Have a good week.